$5.5 billion, 16,400 feet above sea level, 550 kilometers of strategic highway. Here's the blueprint for China's next power move in Asia. A massive highway is being carved through the Himalayas, creating a direct pipeline for Chinese influence straight to India's doorstep. What looks like infrastructure is actually a geopolitical weapon. While the world watches elsewhere, Beijing's newest alliance-building strategy unfolds in the world's highest mountains, and it could reshape the global power balance forever. The Trans-Himalayan Highway, also known as the China-Nepal Highway, stretches approximately 550 kilometers from Lhasa, the capital of Tibet, to Kathmandu, Nepal's capital city. But the true engineering challenge lies in the final 100 kilometers, a section that crosses the Himalayas through terrain previously considered impassable by modern roads. Let's put this in perspective. The highway crosses multiple passes above 5,000 meters. That's over 16,400 feet. At these elevations, atmospheric pressure drops to nearly half of what you experience at sea level. Workers need supplemental oxygen. Construction equipment performs at reduced capacity. Avalanches, landslides, and extreme temperature fluctuations are constant threats. The cost? Current estimates put it at $5.5 billion. But like many Chinese megaprojects, the final price tag will likely be much higher. Construction began in 2019, with sections already operational, and the entire highway is scheduled for completion in 2026. What makes this project different from other mountain roads is its classification as a true highway, designed for high-speed, high-volume transportation with multiple lanes, tunnels through the highest peaks, and dozens of major bridges spanning deep valleys. When completed, what once took a week of treacherous mountain driving will be reduced to approximately 10 hours. Building at the roof of the world brings unprecedented challenges. The Trans-Himalayan Highway passes through a region known for its geological instability. The Himalayan range isn't just tall, it's young and still growing, rising several millimeters each year as the Indian tectonic plate continues its collision with the Eurasian plate. This active geology means Chinese engineers face constant battles with unstable mountainsides, frequent earthquakes, and unpredictable weather patterns. In 2015, Nepal experienced a devastating 7.8 magnitude earthquake that killed nearly 9,000 people. Any infrastructure in this region must be built to withstand similar events. The engineering solutions are as ambitious as the project itself. To overcome the most challenging sections, China is employing tunnel boring machines specially modified for high-altitude operations. These massive machines, some as long as a football field, are cutting through solid mountain rock at elevations where the reduced oxygen makes conventional equipment struggle. Elevated roadways that float above unstable terrain. Rather than cutting into avalanche-prone slopes, many sections are being built on pillars, allowing snow and debris to pass underneath. A network of climate-controlled way stations. These facilities provide emergency services, oxygen supplies, and shelter from extreme weather conditions. Specialized concrete mixtures designed to withstand extreme temperature fluctuations. Regular concrete would crack and fail under the daily freeze-thaw cycles experienced at these elevations. One of the most impressive features is the Gairong Tunnel, a 10-kilometer passage being drilled directly through Mount Everest's neighboring peaks. When completed, it will be among the highest major tunnels in the world, with a maximum elevation of over 5,300 meters inside the mountain. The project employs over 2,000 workers, many of whom must undergo high-altitude conditioning before beginning their rotations. Living and working conditions are extreme, with temperatures ranging from minus 40 degrees Celsius in winter to 30 degrees Celsius in summer. To understand why China is investing billions in this highway, we need to look beyond engineering and focus on geopolitics. The Trans-Himalayan Highway represents something much more significant than a road. It's a strategic move in China's long game for regional dominance. For centuries, the Himalayas have served as a natural buffer between China and the Indian subcontinent. This massive mountain range has limited trade, cultural exchange, and, importantly, military movements between these ancient civilizations. The new highway effectively punches a hole through this buffer. For Nepal, the highway offers an economic lifeline. As a landlocked nation, Nepal has historically been dependent on India for access to the sea and international markets. Nearly 80% of Nepal's imports have traditionally come through India. The Trans-Himalayan Highway changes this equation dramatically, giving Nepal direct access to Chinese ports and reducing its economic dependence on India. This shift is already visible in Nepal's politics. Since construction began, Nepal has signed multiple trade and transit agreements with China, including deals that allow Nepal to use Chinese ports for third country trade. This marks a significant pivot away from its traditional reliance on India. From India's perspective, the highway represents a serious strategic concern. India and China have a complicated relationship marked by a long-standing border dispute that erupted into armed conflict as recently as 2020 in the Galwan Valley. The Trans-Himalayan highway potentially allows China to move military assets close to the Indian border much more rapidly than before. India has responded with its own infrastructure push, accelerating construction of border roads and strategic tunnels. But the pace of India's projects has lagged behind China's, creating what military analysts call an infrastructure gap that could have serious implications in any future conflict. But perhaps the most significant aspect of this project is its role in China's broader Belt and Road Initiative, BRI. Launched in 2013, the BRI aims to connect China with countries across Asia, Africa, and Europe through a network of roads, railways, ports, and other infrastructure projects. The Trans-Himalayan highway represents a critical link in this network, opening new trade routes that bypass traditional sea lanes controlled by the United States and its allies. Beyond geopolitics, the Trans-Himalayan highway promises to reshape economic realities across the region. Currently, trade between China and South Asia is constrained by geography. Goods must either travel by ship through the Malacca Strait and the Indian Ocean, a journey of weeks, or take limited land routes through Pakistan or Myanmar. The new highway could reduce transportation times between Lhasa and Kathmandu from days to hours. This efficiency gain translates directly into economic opportunity, potentially increasing China-Nepal trade from the current $1.5 billion annually to over $10 billion within a decade after completion. For China, the highway also serves domestic economic goals. Tibet, despite massive infrastructure investment, remains one of China's poorest regions. The highway connects Tibet more closely with markets to the south, potentially stimulating local industries and tourism. Chinese officials have specifically highlighted how the project will help alleviate poverty in Tibet's border regions. The economic ripple effects extend beyond the immediate region. Bangladesh, Bhutan, and northern India could all see increased Chinese trade and investment flowing through this new corridor. Chinese companies are already positioning themselves to build industrial parks and special economic zones near the highway's southern terminus. However, this economic opportunity comes with risks. Many economists warn that smaller economies like Nepal could face a debt trap scenario, where Chinese-financed infrastructure creates dependency and potential leverage for China. Similar concerns have been raised about other BRI projects in countries like Sri Lanka, where inability to repay loans resulted in the government leasing a strategic port to China for 99 years. Nepal's leaders insist they are aware of these risks and are navigating them carefully. But the economic gravity of a superpower next door is difficult to resist, especially when that superpower is building a highway directly to your capital. The Himalayan region is one of the most ecologically sensitive areas on the planet, often called the third pole because it contains the largest ice mass after the Arctic and Antarctic. Its glaciers feed major river systems that sustain nearly 1.5 billion people across Asia. Environmental experts have raised serious concerns about the Trans-Himalayan highway's impact on this fragile ecosystem. Construction activities have already triggered landslides in several areas. The highway cuts through previously remote regions, bringing pollution, noise, and human activity to pristine environments. Of particular concern is the project's potential impact on water security. The Himalayas are the source of 10 major river systems, including the Ganges, Indus, Yangtze, and Yellow rivers. Disruption to natural water flows could have downstream consequences for billions of people who depend on these river systems for agriculture and drinking water. Climate change is already affecting the region, with Himalayan glaciers melting at accelerating rates. Some environmental scientists warn that large-scale infrastructure projects like the highway could exacerbate these effects, creating a feedback loop of environmental degradation. Chinese officials counter these concerns by pointing to environmental protection measures incorporated into the highway's design. These include wildlife crossings, reforestation efforts, and slope stabilization techniques designed to minimize erosion. They argue that improved access will actually help conservation efforts by making it easier to monitor and protect remote areas. However, independent environmental assessments have been limited, with restricted access to construction zones making it difficult to verify these claims. Environmental groups continue to push for greater transparency and more rigorous impact studies. As we look to the future, the Trans-Himalayan Highway raises profound questions about the changing dynamics of Asia. This single infrastructure project embodies larger trends reshaping the continent. China's rising influence, shifting alliances, the tension between economic development and environmental protection, and the evolving relationship between geography and power. For Nepal and other small states in the region, the highway presents both opportunity and challenge. Greater connectivity promises economic benefits, but also increases vulnerability to external pressures. Maintaining sovereignty and strategic autonomy while benefiting from Chinese investment will require skillful diplomacy. India faces perhaps the most complex strategic calculations. Does it attempt to counter China's infrastructure push with projects of its own? Does it accept a diminished role in Nepal and focus on other priorities? Or does it seek accommodation with China, finding ways to benefit from the new connectivity while protecting core interests? For China, the highway represents another step in its transformation from a regional power to a global one. By reshaping the physical landscape, China is also reshaping political realities. The ability to project economic and potentially military power across the Himalayas fundamentally alters strategic equations that have held for generations. The Trans-Himalayan Highway also offers a window into a future where infrastructure increasingly serves as a tool of statecraft. In a world where traditional forms of power projection face growing constraints, the ability to build connections, physical, economic, and political, becomes increasingly valuable. The machines continue their work in the thin Himalayan air, cutting through rock that has stood for millions of years. With each kilometer of pavement laid, the balance of power in Asia shifts slightly. What was once impossible becomes inevitable. The mountains that have separated civilizations for millennia are being bridged. But here's the question that keeps military planners and geopolitical analysts awake at night. If China can build a highway through the world's highest mountains in just a few years, what else might be possible? Let us know what you think in the comments section. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and watch our next one shown on screen.